Who's more complicated, a man or a woman? Hello, I'm Dr. Debi. Yes, we know that men and women are different by design, but which gender is more complicated? If a man is asked that question, he'll say women are more complicated. When a woman says or does something he doesn't understand, he often gives up trying to make sense of it. If a woman is asked the same question, she may not answer directly, but her behavior tells the story. When a man says or does something she doesn't understand, she just assumes he's wrong, and then she tries to correct or fix him. Or, depending on how long she's been trying, she'll drag him to couples counseling. Let's talk about that. Years ago, I was dining with a table full of counselors at a psychology conference. As we were enjoying our salads, each person took a turn at self-introduction. At the time, I was a psychology professor, so everyone wanted to know what classes I taught. Introduction to Psychology, Human Growth and Development, Personal and Social Adjustment, Theories of Personality, Counseling Techniques, Practicum, Doctoral Research Seminar, and the Psychology of Men. I saved the best for last because it always had the power to elicit a reaction. The women fell silent, but the men laughed, saying something about what a short course that must have been. Or how could you have enough material to teach a whole semester on the subject of men? These guys believed they were so simple that no one needed to spend much time studying them. Their attitude and lack of self-awareness about their own gender development is precisely the problem with trying to understand men. Most men don't see the need to explain what they think, how they feel, or why they act the way they do. From their perspective, they're simply normal. Asking a man to describe his inner world is like asking a fish to describe water. It's all he's ever known. No one encourages boys to talk about what's happening inside them. In fact, most are taught to keep it hidden. Over time, many learn to do that so well that they stop acknowledging their emotional experience, even to themselves. Contrary to popular belief, boys begin life very sensitive, often more sensitive than their sisters, more sensitive than the girls in their classrooms. As boys mature into men, they learn emotional restraint. That's not a flaw, it's essential. Men are physically powerful, so emotional regulation protects everyone, including him. But that regulation comes at a cost. Rather than processing emotions out loud, men are trained to sublimate feelings into action, fixing problems, solving issues, restoring order. When emotions overwhelm that system, a man withdraws, first to calm his body, then to think. And this is where marriages get into trouble. That silence terrifies women. When a man goes silent, his wife assumes the worst. He isn't listening, and he doesn't care. She has no idea that the opposite may actually be true. Not understanding his internal design, she steps in, talking more, offering advice, criticizing what she sees as disengagement. In her effort to fix the distance, she adds pressure. His heart rate climbs. His system overloads. He can't process her words anymore, not because he doesn't want to, but because emotional flooding overrides reason, always, for women and for men. The longer he stays quiet, the harder she tries. She gives more examples, raises her intensity, hopes he'll finally get it. He doesn't. He only knows she's angry. He can't hear the fear that's driving her words, so he tunes out, not out of indifference, but out of overload. Across decades of working with couples, I saw this exact pattern repeat again and again. She felt unheard, he felt attacked. Over time, his defensive response became automatic. Withdrawal became his default. She felt increasingly alone, and in many cases, she truly was. When men disengage emotionally, they often do so to avoid hurting their wives. They leave the room, the house, sometimes with no announcement and no explanation. And her anxiety spikes. Both partners escalate one another without understanding why. On the other hand, women are taught to talk through their feelings, to connect verbally, to collaborate emotionally. So when a man doesn't engage in dialogue, she assumes he doesn't understand. Or worse, he doesn't care. She uses more words, more explanations, more emphasis. What she doesn't realize is that her husband only has one signal to go by: his physiological response. To him, it's simple: green light, calm; red light, danger. Fight, flight, or freeze. Most men freeze first. And here's a simple reason why. In so many ways, men are actually more complicated than women. We don't understand what's going on inside him, and he won't say. Women's processes, while confusing to men, are largely external. They're expressed, shared, spoken aloud. Yes, her vulnerability is often masked by anger. She may sound aggressive when she's actually afraid, much like a frightened kitten pulling itself up to appear bigger and more powerful. Men don't read that nuance. To them, anger is anger. Red light, danger. Men's processes, on the other hand, are internal, unspoken, invisible. That leaves women to fill in the gaps, and they do that often with assumptions based on how they would feel if they were talking themselves. That's why misunderstandings multiply. Over time, I learned to speak the male language fluently. Men may use fewer words, but their bodies speak volumes. Posture, breathing, minute changes in facial expression or color, and their eyes. They're all clear indicators that something is happening beneath the surface. When men felt seen and validated in my office, change happened quickly. The challenge was teaching their wives how to truly see their husbands. When they learned, everything improved. On the other hand, teaching men about women often proves to be far more difficult. Men understand concepts intellectually until they try to apply them in real time. Their sensitivity to their wives' reactions hijack their ability to stay present. Many shut down before skills have a chance to take root. Only a handful of men manage to override that instinct, and even then their marriages struggle when understanding isn't mutual. Decades of research and experience reveal a consistent pattern. Disconnection happens before conflict. Repair begins when the withdrawn partner feels safe enough to re-engage. For most couples, that means creating space for the husband first. In my work, that means calming the most anxious person in the room, often the wife, so the most silent person can speak without fear of retribution. That's when everything starts to change. By translating emotional experience across genders, couples learn to hear one another more with greater accuracy and clarity. Men find words, women find understanding. Most of my work isn't about learning new skills, but unlearning false beliefs about the opposite sex. Truth replaces assumptions, and marriages become resilient. That is, strong enough to withstand pressure without collapsing. The bottom line: understanding must come before being understood. Learning the truth requires unlearning the lies. When couples commit to education rather than accusation, connection returns. The solutions are simple. They're just not always obvious, and they're rarely easy, but they work. And the effort, which is much less than it was before, is always worth it. If this helped make sense of something that's felt confusing or painful for a long time, let that understanding settle a bit. Real change doesn't start with fixing your partner. It starts with seeing more clearly. That's the work I do here, helping men and women understand one another with accuracy, compassion, and truth. And I'm really glad you're here.